did.
Let's talk about what you did this week, raising a lot of eyebrows here in Washington, D.C.
Just a few.
You announced this week you're the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, but you're raising $20 million to boost primary challengers running in safe Democratic seats against incumbent Democrats. Yes, safe
Thank you
seats.
for the clarification.
Yeah, it's causing a lot of stir. We asked James Carville about it the other day. We couldn't get you. We couldn't book you that day for whatever reason.
Well, rest assured, he's my biggest fan.
Well, so here's James Carville. Here's what he had to say about your idea. Take a listen.
The most insane thing I ever heard is the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee is spending $20 million running against other Democrats. Aren't we supposed to run against Republicans?
What's your response?
What's his plan to deal with our 27% approval rating? That's my question to him. The fact of the matter is right now, our party is in a crisis. We are seeing people lose faith in our party. They're losing faith in democracy across the country. And we need to make sure that we're getting people to vote for Democrats, not simply because we're not Donald Trump, but because we have a better message, a better option for them. Not simply the less bad of two options, as I think Carville tries to promote when he says, well, we just shouldn't say anything. Carville believes in a politics of being timid, of hiding. I believe in fighting. And that is what people want to see right now from the Democratic Party. And we just saw an example of that with Senator Van Hollen going to El Salvador to say, we need to meet with this man. And yes, Democrats obviously are in the minority right now, but let's be clear, we cannot win back the majority if we do not convince the American people that our party offers something that isn't just not Donald Trump, but is substantially better than Donald Trump, that fights to lower costs for Americans across the country, whether it's healthcare, housing, or the foundational building blocks of the American dream that feels so out of reach for people, or addressing gun violence. We can't simply just hide, as Carville repeatedly promotes, not to mention the fact that, frankly, he has not won an election since before I was born. I think it's time for some new voices in our party.
When were you born?
2000.
Well, I guess that. So anyway, I can hear James Carville's head exploding all the way from New Orleans when you called him timid. And James, you're welcome back on the show next week. And you
Happy to talk more.
And you can respond.
Something that's clearly going on, it's so obvious for everybody to see, is there what I call talking heads. That's the polite way. There's loads of other derogative terms. James Carville is a man for all opinions. Supposedly, he's a Democratic expert because in previous campaigns he's had something to do with the president-elect, etc., etc. All of that stuff. You can Google it. My point being is, I tend to think elections from the last two elections are very different to elections that may have happened in the 80s or 90s. So when James Carville is weighing in with his expertise, maybe he's looking from afar. The reason I say that is because what he is doing right now is just stirring the infighting within the Democratic Party, not because he'd like to, I think, find a solution, but because he'd like to pick a paycheck up. Because this is what happens. It's not clickbait, it is clipbait. Carville says something, it's pushed out on social media, a little quote here, a little tidbit there, and he picks up a check and gets another booking. He's always looking right now as when he's playing for somebody within the Democratic Party to attack. No idea why. Because he's one of these people who has an opinion on everything until it actually counts, and then he's either sitting on the fence or missing in action. This week, he's decided to have a go at David Hogg, who's now a very senior member of the Democratic Party, attempting to get more Gen Z people to vote for the Democrats. That's his task. Carville, for reasons best known to himself, considers himself an elite, above it all, knows so much more, so instead of focusing on what's going on in the Republican Party, decides to, well, it's an easy one, isn't it? Then you add in Jake Tapper, who is, I think Jake Tapper is soft MAGA. I really, really do. Just remember that interview when they did the town hall, they gave Trump such an easier time in comparison to Biden. But that's neither here nor there. The reason I say that is Tapper with Hogg, you watch that back and you think, if I was David Hogg, I wouldn't have done the interview, truth be told. Jake Tapper is no friend of the Democratic Party, and nor is CNN. For them, it's just like, let's keep the fire going. Let's keep the fight going. Oh, we got some infighting, great. That's what we'll do. And where's it leading to? Just down a hole. Look, we're not even to the first 80 days of the Trump presidency. I don't think the Democrats are in any rush, or need to be in any rush, to find their new heir apparent. But of course, CNN needs to stoke it all up. So if I was David Hogg, I would just ignore anything Carville has to say. Let him carry on and wind himself out, run into. This is the craziest thing. Why do all the cable news station thinks James Carville has the answer? You tell me. Stop randomly 100 people right now. James, who they'll say?
Quote she used, Maggie, "We are all afraid." Is that fear justified?
Look, she's saying something that you have heard senators say over time privately and most vocally, frankly, Casey, around the January 6th Senate impeachment trial of Donald Trump, which I think was in February of 2021 was when the trial itself took place. January 6th with obviously the event and the attack on the Capitol by a pro-Trump mob. You had some senators who were afraid that they were going to see their families targeted. And so, you know, is her, I can't speak for why she feels afraid or is it justified, but it is certainly something that we hear over and over again. I would say that Congress and the Senate, the House and the Senate, are co-equal branches of the government, and they represent constituents. And if they have concerns, you know, what would seem to be keeping them from speaking out is, you know, maybe it's personal fears, but in a lot of cases, it's fears of them losing their jobs, and that's sort of a different issue than fear of personal safety or something else.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely taken. I guess when I was asking, is it justified? It's just you noted in your story that there seems to have been this evolution for Trump himself. Right, that there has been this change. I think my question is there really a marked difference in his behavior here? And do you think that you see a willingness on his part to go after people in a new way?
Oh, sure. Look, I mean, this was Jonathan Swan and Mike Schmidt and Charlie Savage and I wrote about this. I don't think there's been an evolution in terms of what Trump would like to use the levers of government for. I think there has been an evolution in terms of how he is using the levers of government and how streamlined and centralized it is within the White House. So, you know, instead of using his Twitter feed or having phone calls with Jeff Sessions, as we saw in 2017, you had in the Oval Office last week Donald Trump signing presidential memoranda targeting two individuals who had worked in the first Trump administration, one of whom because he disagreed that the election was stolen and spoke openly about that. And that is a line crossed that we had not seen before. And what that portends for the future, we shall see.
All right, Maggie Haberman, so grateful to have you on the show. I really appreciate it. And I do hope that you come back soon.
Turn to the administration and the judicial branch of the United States government. The Trump administration is finding ways to defy the courts on a few fronts right now. One is refusing to bring back Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Another example is continuing to block the Associated Press from covering the president, despite a judge ordering the White House to treat the AP like other news organizations. Sir, I know that you have said that the president defying court orders would create a constitutional crisis. Are we there?
I think what we need right now is certainly, we're in a crisis across the board, right? I mean, that is obvious for everyone to see. This is not normal. The president is assaulting the economy, assaulting Social Security, assaulting healthcare, assaulting the American way of life, and assaulting our democracy. None of this is normal. It is all a crisis. Now, with respect to what we need to deal with in terms of the situation with the courts, the Supreme Court needs to aggressively enforce its judicial orders. The White House is seeking a confrontation with the courts, then the courts need to lean into that. We will have the back of the courts, and it needs to use all of the tools available to it, like contempt,
for example,
like contempt, in terms of the people within the administration who are failing to adhere to these judicial orders or who are actively continuing to propagate unlawful or unconstitutional actions at Donald Trump's direction.
Well, we did see one example of the threat of contempt yesterday. A federal judge did that with regard to those flights that left after he signed an order saying that they shouldn't go. But you think that that threat should go all the way up to the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land?
Well, in the case of Mr. Abrego Garcia, there was a Supreme Court decision that was issued. And so when you have a Supreme Court decision that was issued instructing the administration to facilitate Mr. Abrego Garcia's return. And it seems to me that ultimately the court is going to need to aggressively enforce its decision. When you've got lower courts who have issued orders, then of course the jurisdiction will fall with them.
I just want to make sure I am understanding you right. Are you saying that the Supreme Court should hold President Trump in contempt, should hold his cabinet members who were involved in this in contempt?
The Supreme Court needs to take a close look at enforcing its orders, and that is generally going to involve not the president, of course, at this moment in time, but it's going to involve cabinet secretaries and other administration officials who are responsible for the actual execution of these orders or the non-compliance.
How is that
And
not a constitutional crisis?
Of course, the courts are going to have to be. I said that we are in a crisis across the board. We are in a crisis across the board in every way possible, including the assault on the democratic way of life. Now, the courts are going to have to aggressively enforce we are in a crisis. We've apparently been in a crisis, I think, since January 20th, across the board. We're in an economic crisis. We're in a democracy crisis. We're in a crisis as it relates to the assault on health care, the assault on Social Security. None of this is normal.
I just really want to...
answering a question about Jerome Powell. Let's take a listen.
I don't think he's doing the job. He's too late, always too late, a little slow, and I'm not happy with him. I let him know it, and if I want him out, he'll be out of there real fast, believe me.
So
Go ahead, please. Question?
Are you trying to remove him, Mr. President?
Yeah, question?
Mr. President, yesterday Judge Boasberg, in a case against your administration, said the Constitution does not tolerate willful disobedience of judicial order. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, you're going to have to speak to the lawyers. We have great lawyers. I can tell you this, we're doing a fantastic job of getting criminals out of this country who Biden allowed into the country. Hundreds of thousands of criminals, murderers and drug dealers. And I was elected because of the fact, I would say maybe that was the number one factor, a lot of reasons, the economy, a lot of things. But one of the primary reasons I was elected is because I said, I'm going to get the criminals that he allowed to come into our country so stupidly through open borders. I'm going to get them out. And I got a lot of votes, record-setting numbers of votes, as you know. We won everything. The popular vote, all 7 swing states, we won everything. And that's what the public wanted, and that's what I'm doing. But you have to speak to the lawyers because it's up to them.
Mr. President, what do you think of the proposal from France?
Say it.
What do you think of the proposal from France and UK of a peace mission in Ukraine with soldiers? And do you think that Italy should take part into it?
Well, I think Italy will have to make that determination, but peace missions are always good with me. I'm okay with peace missions. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, have you discussed what areas of cooperation have you discussed with the Prime Minister vis-a-vis Italy and the United States and Europe and the United States? And on China?
We discussed it very briefly. No, we're doing very well with negotiations, I think, with all countries. And Scott could tell you a little bit, but we are doing very well. We have a lot of countries that want to make a deal. Frankly, they want to make deals more than I do. Go ahead, Scott. Would you say something?
Yeah, we've got a process in place. We're working on the big 15 economies first. We had a fantastic meeting with Japan yesterday. I believe there's been calls with the EU already. And then we have South Korea coming in next week. And I believe India is also talking, that's moving very quickly.
Mr. President, Ukraine's President Zelensky has said he has evidence that China is supplying weaponry or ammunition to Russia. Do you have any evidence along those lines? And also, he said we could see a minerals deal signed this week. Is that...
Well, we have a minerals deal, which I guess is going to be signed on Thursday, Scott, next Thursday, soon. And I assume they're going to live up to the deal, so we'll see. But we have a deal on that. No, I have no comment on that. I have no idea. That's his statement, not mine.
Mr. President, there are reports that you waved off an Israeli attack on Iranian nuclear facilities. Can you comment on that? Is that accurate?
And they say the attack is what?
That you waved off an Israeli plan to attack Iranian nuclear facilities.
I wouldn't say waved off. I'm not in a rush to do it because I think that Iran has a chance to have a great country. and to live happily without death. And I'd like to see that. That's my first option. If there's a second option, I think it would be very bad for Iran. And I think Iran is wanting to talk. I hope they're wanting to talk. It's going to be very good for them if they do. And I'd like to see Iran thrive in the future, do fantastically well. I know the Iranian people, they're incredible people. Always have been very smart, very energetic, very successful people. And I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt anybody. I really don't. But Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. It's, pretty simple. It's really simple. We're not looking to take their industry. We're not looking to take their land. All we're saying is you can't have a nuclear weapon. The deal that was made with Obama, and that deal would have expired already. It was a terrible deal. It would have expired, and that gave them a clear path to a nuclear weapon. I wouldn't have accepted. That's why I terminated the deal. Number one, it was way too short. When countries are involved, you don't make short-term deals. These are countries with long lives, and I terminated that. And it was a great termination because it didn't allow us to do anything. Once it terminated, you know what the deal was. It was a terrible deal. Really, one of many terrible deals made by the U.S. But no, I'd like to see Iran thrive. And they can do that, I think, very easily. Or they can do it the other way. And the other way is not going to be good for them. It's going to be really bad for them. Well, Jensen's an amazing guy. He's become a friend of mine, and I don't know, he's a person that's very proud of our country. He loves our country. I'm not worried about Jensen at all.
Mr. President, we're holding you in contempt. Will you take steps to return Kilmar Abrego Garcia to the United States and put him in front of a judge?
Well, I'm not involved in it. I'm going to respond by saying you'll have to speak to the lawyers, the DOJ. I've heard many things about him, and we'll have to find out what the truth is. But I will say this, we were inundated by millions of people, many millions of people during the Biden administration. They say 21 million. And a big percentage of those are criminals, serious criminals. I'm not saying just criminals because they came into the border illegally. I'm saying they're criminals at the highest level, murderers. Many of those people murdered more than one person, and they're on the loose. And I was elected to get rid of those criminals, to get them out of our country, or to put them away, but to get them out of our country. And I don't see how judges can take that authority away from a president. We've done an amazing job, Tom Holman, Kristi Noem. We have done an amazing job. Nobody can believe the job we've done. Far greater than what I said. I mean, I got elected on that, but we've done much better. We have right now 99% border. It's a 99%. Nobody thought that would even be, nobody's coming through our border practically. 2 weeks ago, we had 9 people come through, all for medical reasons. We allowed them. We brought them through because one had a heart attack, one had something else, all for medical reasons. We have a great border. We had a great border 4 years ago, but we have a border now that's even tighter, and we did that in a matter of weeks. And no, we have to. We need to get murderers and drug dealers and people that were in jail for horrible. They released jails, Georgia, from all over the world, and released them, not just South America, all over the world, the Congo and Africa. Many, many people come from the Congo. I don't know what that is, but they came from the Congo. And all over the world they came in, opened their jails. Venezuela, practically all of their prisoners released into our country. And we took them because we had an incompetent administration called the Biden administration. And to think what they've done to our country. And I was elected to straighten that out, and I'm doing that. But we have activist judges that don't want murderers to be sent out of our country. They don't want killers and drug dealers and drug lords and people from mental institutions. They want them to stay in our country, I guess. I don't know, maybe that's the liberal way, or as they call it nowadays, the progressive way. but I don't think it's the way that our country believes, and that's why I won in a landslide.
Mr. President,